Well, welcome everyone to this inaugural episode of Iceni's new vlog, which we've called When Tomorrow Comes. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues from Iceni's Iceni Futures team. So we have Ashley Cook and we have Dan Jessica, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Morning, guys.
Morning, Ian.
Morning, Ian.
Now, as is the way with all of these, this brave new world of home recording, there's going to be a bit of background noise. Dan, we've already heard your kids make themselves known, so that's fine. We're as we've been discussing, it's nice to get to know some of our colleagues' extended families through this enforced period of home working. So just to explain what the point of our vlog is, which we've called When Tomorrow Comes, we thought it'd be a nice way, whilst everyone's working from home, just to try and generate some discussions on subjects that are important to us, or could well become important to us. Going forward, we'll have some special guests, whether it's clients or other contacts that we're all working with in the industry, and hopefully also people from outside the industry. So we have a whole variety of topics and discussions. But guys, today we're going to talk about what Iceni is doing in the futures sector. Ashley, do you want to kick off with why we've set up a group and what we're hoping to achieve through that?
Yeah, of course, Ian, that's fine. So as Ian said, my name's Ashley, and I've been one of the key members of Iceni Futures since we launched. We launched about 2 years ago now, and part of our purpose was to educate the wider Iceni company on maybe some certain working practices that we could do better, or things that we could be more streamlined on. And then we began to diversify, and we began to look into the wider planning industry to try and do some research and understand how the planning and development industry could become more future-proofed. I think for a long time, planning's had a little bit of a name for itself as an industry that maybe doesn't keep up with the times. We know that certain other industries such as medicine and finance have all had tech revolutions already, but for planning, that's something that just no one seemed to have any ambition for. So for us, it was really important to try and understand how we could help planning find its kind of future place. So a lot of what we have been doing over the past few years is to be hosting events or doing research, publishing articles, and they try to explore different topics, not just in planning and development, but in kind of future and technology more generally. So we've published a couple of articles on 5G, also on things like underground farming, because all of these initiatives we see as related to planning and development, related to the way that our cities are growing, but also they're trying to give a future perspective to the things we need to think about when we're talking about development now, and also development for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
So, Dan, are you sure you haven't just invented this week because we're working from home and we all want to sound like we're really clever in using technology?
No, not really. We've been, as I say, as Ashley said, we've been working on this for quite a while. And you know, from my perspective, the sustainability of our developments is inextricably linked with their futures. We all want the developments and projects we work on to be there in 2, 3, 4 generations' time. So what does that mean in terms of the environment that we're providing, both in terms of a kind of traditional sense of the environment, looking at pollution, carbon emissions, climate resilience and that sort of thing, but also in just creating places that people want to live. You know, you've got examples at both ends of the scale. You've got the massive Eco Sainsbury's that was built down in Greenwich at the turn of the millennium. That was a very environmentally friendly store that didn't even last for 15 years before it was pulled down because it didn't anticipate the growth trends on the Greenwich Peninsula. And then you've got buildings like the Oxo Tower on the South Bank of London, which was never really envisaged as being a particularly green or sustainable building, but over the course of its life has been sort of industrial, commercial, retail and residential. So the future of our buildings really lies in providing a sort of lasting legacy in terms of the environmental and social, and of course the economic factors And coincidentally, they're the 3 pillars of sustainable development that are mentioned in the NPPF.
Is that your fan club, Dan, screaming for you?
It is, yeah. They're big fans of my work, actually.
Very good. Well, they were impressed, obviously, with that. Ashley, it's easy to sort of talk about almost in sound bites. Is there, I mean, where are you using these thoughts, these applications at the moment? Have we got any sort of live projects that spring to mind where you can give us some sort of practical examples of what you're trying to achieve?
One project that we are beginning to work on, and I think it's important to say that to bring this forward and to apply it to projects was not necessarily something we intended to do in the beginning, but what we've noticed is through the work that we're doing with clients, they are also becoming more aware of the importance of their projects being future-proofed and actually planning for them from a different perspective. So not planning for them from how we live now, but planning for them in terms of saying, well, actually, let's start from 40 years in the future and let's think about how people could be living then. So I think that's an important trend to notice. And so we've got sort of quite a large project on at the moment where we're informing a client on that basis. And the idea is that we're starting at sort of 2060. And we're saying to them, okay, let's look at the trends that we know are happening, the things that we know are changing. So Dan has already touched on the sustainability aspects of this, but there are other aspects, such as the different ways that we're beginning to move around, you know, whether that's electric vehicles or whether it's electric bikes, scooters, etc. And also the way that we maybe grow and consume food as well. We no longer eat food in the same ways we used to. Huge reliance on services like Deliveroo, also huge reliance on sort of large scale supermarkets. Obviously the challenge that we're going through at the moment in terms of coronavirus puts a lot of strain on that. And I think that what we're trying to help clients is to look into the future and say, well, how is technology and innovation going to change the ways that we do this in the future? And how do we bring that to the forefront of your sort of development agenda? So we're not saying, okay, well, look, we've got to plan 50 years in the future and we're going to base that on housing typologies that we're using now or road layouts that we're using now. We've got to think a little bit differently about it. And obviously, the one big caveat to this is that the future is very unpredictable. So we're not going to stand up there and say we know exactly what's going to happen. But what we can do is advise on the general trends and the emerging ways of thinking so that our clients are best informed and they know what to expect in terms of changes in policy and legislation and also the emerging technology. And I think key to the way that we inform the client is to advise them about being adaptable. Dan spoke just there about 2 very different types of development. And I would say that the thing that obviously has been very positive for the Oxo Tower is its adaptability as a building. And so I think this is something that's very, very key. We don't necessarily know exactly what technology or what types of development will come forward in 50 years' time. But what we do know is that we can plan to be adaptable so the buildings we do provide and the settlements and neighbourhoods we do build are able to embrace new technology and able to embrace new ways of living. So I think that's something that we keep at the forefront of our mind when we're informing clients.
And I mean, we called it Iceni Futures, but equally, what about Iceni Now? I mean, Dan, since we've all been in this kind of enforced shutdown, is it too early to talk about what we're seeing and whether they're trends or whether they're just sort of incidental peaks that are going to be forgotten when we all hopefully go back to a normal places of work? Or is there such thing as a normal place of work anymore?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you can definitely see a couple of trends. I mean, we've noticed that, you know, people are extremely adaptable. You know, the fact that people have carried on working, new ways of working from different parts of their houses, carried on doing what they're doing is a testament to the adaptability of the human species. I mean, you look at where we've come from and the way in which the human species has proliferated around the globe, living in different climate zones, different environments, adapting to different places. Now, we've always been an adaptable species, and I think that the current crisis has really highlighted our adaptability. What is apparent, though, is the lack of resilience in our system to cope with large-scale change. I mean, yes, you know, we're lucky enough to be able to carry on working from our living rooms and bedrooms and whatnot, but there's vast sections of the industry that are virtually shut down. You know, there are supply chains that are broken down. So I think we really need to look at how resilient our sort of whole economy is to these large scale changes, because, you know, sometimes you can influence the future, and other times, like now, the future is very much influencing us. So what we need to try and do is build up our resilience, because, you know, in the future it might not be coronavirus, it might be climate change impacts that we're having to respond to. So I think that this new ways of working, this new way of looking at the world, might help us to plan to be a bit more resilient as a society and an economy in future to these big sort of mega trends and black swan events like coronavirus.
So we're going to be doing a lot more video conferencing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think so, and I think that a lot of the practices that we're now having to use in terms of the video calling and, you know, using online resources more, they are all aspects that the planning industry really had no excuse not to adopt about 3-4 years ago. But just because of the way that the planning industry often is, it does mean that you know, a lot of people haven't adopted those practices. So as you said, Dan, we're lucky. We just, through the technology that we had as a company, have all been able to just very quickly begin to work from home. But I know that a lot of other parts of the planning industry are maybe not necessarily coping quite as well with this in the immediate, and they will learn to adapt. But it's going to take a little bit of time. Now, it's not their fault. It's something that the planning industry has always been playing catch up, and we obviously have a lot of the work that we do is tied down to legislation and regulations that are not necessarily quick to change. But we're already seeing that actually things can happen quickly when they are forced into a situation where they need to. So, for example, we've now got the permitted development right that has kind of appeared overnight on restaurants being able to function as takeaway facilities. So that's really interesting. That is something that clearly can happen quickly when necessary. But in terms of decision-making powers for local authorities and having virtual committees and decision-making meetings, that's happening, but it's taken a while. And there's a question around, should we have been able to have those sort of meetings virtually before this date? And it's unfortunately taken this to push that part of the industry into the 21st century.
I just one thing I've been reflecting on is, I mean, I'm in a lucky position that I've got a big house, I've got a home office in the garden, so I've got a good work setup. But what I'm questioning is, you know, we talk about people working from home, and I mean, we've got a number of our colleagues who are probably crammed into one-bedroom flats, sharing with partners who are also trying to carry on with their daily lives. I mean, that doesn't strike me as a fantastic work environment. So I wonder whether it will actually polarise it. Those that have the means to work remotely will benefit from it, but those that are finding themselves, as many Londoners and others in other metropolitan areas are finding themselves in relatively cramped living conditions, whether they'll be running back to their offices just as soon as they can.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? The Code for Sustainable Homes, which was abolished in 2015, used to give you a credit for having a home office space, or a space that could be adapted into a home office in your dwelling. And that was quite an easy one to do. You had to just basically make sure that there was space available with a decent broadband connection. But you know, we're seeing places get more and more squeezed. You know, spaces like co-living. How would you possibly do sort of large-scale video in a co-living environment?
I suppose what it could lead to, Dan, I mean, if you think of the sort of work we've been doing with people like Greystar, I mean, it could accelerate the idea of having sort of work suites, and perhaps we're going to see a whole lineup of almost like a return to old-style phone booths. Just the private sort of pods for people to be able to have private video conversations.
Yeah, it could work like that, couldn't it? I mean, you see a lot of that in sort of modern workplaces where you've got different working environments for people with different tasks. So you have sort of quiet spaces, open plan spaces. And I guess with a lot of the the sort of co-working aspects of you know, the sort of WeWorks office group and everything like that, they are adaptable to excuse me, lots of different ways of working. You've got, as you say, like the co-living models have adaptable, flexible office space, often on the ground floor, where people can just go downstairs and work from those sort of spaces. So, yeah, the industry is already kind of geared up to this sort of working environment, whether you're really aware of it or not. And it is, you know, it does sort of draw a line almost down the middle of society between those people who have access to working space and those who kind of, yeah, might find themselves in a bit of a bind when it comes to sort of trying to find a bit of quiet space to have a video conference.
So Dan, I can see you're in, what's that, the spare room? I think you've left your dirty underwear on the bed behind you. You might want to pick that up in future.
Oh,
Ashley, you look like you're the wall behind you could do with a bit of decorating. You need to press the button that puts up a virtual background before we speak again.
Okay, fine.
I'm conscious of time. We've probably all got to get back to work. Thanks for joining in on this on this first vlog, I think we're calling it. I think the aim is that we'll be publishing this on our website and the usual social media channels. We'll probably put it on our Vimeo link as well. We're keen to get feedback from people. We're keen to get thoughts and ideas on topics that we can discuss. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking to have a variety of special guests to join us. So if I can just say to you all, thanks for joining us this morning, and look forward to catching up with you soon. Cheers, guys.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks.